Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2, receive a presentation of results from the Yuba Water grant to the Nature Conservancy to study large tree patterns and improved forest health management strategies in the North Yuba Watershed. Joanna.
Good morning, board. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everybody. I'm Joanna Lassard. I'm the watershed manager for the Yuba Water Agency, and I'm pleased to be here to introduce Nick Hendershot and his colleagues to go over the large tree, we also call it the legacy tree study in the North Yuba River watershed. This study was cost shared by the Yuba Water Agency and the Nature Conservancy to better understand the role of large trees and how it intersects with our implementation planning for reaching our forest restoration goals. So I'll hand it off to Nick and his colleagues. I'm not sure who's starting first to give us the presentation on the research results.
Hello, everyone. Hello, board. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. I will just quickly introduce myself. My name is Nicholas Hendershot. I'm a forest ecologist with the Nature Conservancy. I appreciate you taking the time to have us here. I will let my colleagues, Derek Young and Emily Purvis, just quickly introduce themselves, and then we will start our presentation.
Hello, I'm Derek Young. I'm a research ecologist at UC Davis. We're partners with TNC on this project.
This is Emily. I am a graduate student at UC Davis, and Derek is my advisor.
Perfect. I just want to confirm, can you see the slide deck that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and begin. Thank you for having us this morning. Today, we're sharing results from a YWA-funded grant where we're examining the distribution of large trees in the North Yuba landscape and their role in forest restoration. And as Joanna mentioned, this project was made possible through a shared investment with the Yuba Water Agency through the Community Impact Program and a match by the Nature Conservancy. And so we're really appreciative and thankful. This has really helped improve our research capacity to understand the role of large trees in the North Yuba landscape and their role in forest restoration. And as a little background, this study and the results here are really directly relevant to the work being undertaken by the North Yuba Forest Partnership. And as background for everyone, this partnership is a collaborative of 9 organizations, including YWA, Tahoe National Forest, South Yuba River Citizen League, the Nevada City Rancheria, and other organizations where we're working to restore 275,000 acres in the North Yuba watershed. And the project footprint is shown here in green on this map. And I also circled the New Bullards Bar Reservoir here in red, just as a point of reference. And this partnership formed in 2019 and really aims to reduce catastrophic wildfire risk, enhance forest health, and protect water supplies through ecologically based thinning and prescribed fire. And so in the North Yuba landscape, we have some unique characteristics that really make it a valuable resource for much of the Sierra Nevada and much of California. And unlike many areas in California, this landscape has avoided recent catastrophic wildfires. And it contains a really important ecological asset, and that is the presence of these large legacy fire-adapted trees across the landscape. These trees are really important. They provide really important carbon storage. They provide wildlife habitat. They provide fire resilience, and they help protect and maintain our water supplies. Unfortunately, and it may not be a surprise, they're at risk. They're at risk from wildfires, but they also are at risk from other species in the landscape. They often co-occur at really high densities with fire-intolerant trees that create competition. They make them more vulnerable to insect outbreaks, and they ultimately increase the probability that these trees will die should a wildfire occur. And in the landscape, our restoration treatments are generally capped by tree size. And this, in some ways, can limit the tools that are available to help us protect these large legacy fire-adapted trees. And so to help address this, the Tahoe National Forest proposed this solution, which is this large tree amendment, which allows for the surgical removal of specific fire-intolerant trees that threaten the persistence of legacy fire-adapted trees in the landscape. And so as a part of this work, our core question is, do these rules that are in place, do they unintentionally prevent us from restoring historical fire-resilient forests, which are going to help protect our watershed? And my colleagues here will address this question in two parts. First, better understanding of the distribution of large trees across the landscape, and then second, understanding how current policies impact restoration outcomes. And so I'll hand it off to Derek to get into some of this work in more detail.
All right, thanks. And thanks for this opportunity to share this work we've been working on over the last few years. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the data we've collected with Yuba Water Agency funding and some of the ways we've analyzed it related to this large tree abundance question. So next slide. So with the help of a field contractor that TNC hired, we collected data from about 150 field plots across the North Yuba area. The majority of these were used for directly in an analysis of large tree abundance and the influence of these thinning diameter caps, which you'll hear about in a minute from Emily. But a smaller subset of these plots, the ones you see in yellow on the right, they were extra large plots where we also collected drone imagery to be able to understand the abundance of large trees over much broader areas than the field plots cover. Next slide. So here's an example of the data from one field plot. This is one of the larger plot types where we also collected drone data. All of the trees in the plot were measured and mapped out spatially. All of the data are now openly available via a web platform that we built called the Open Forest Observatory, with the link on the slide here, where you can browse the data in an interactive viewer and download it. And these plots are the basis for us to train and validate the drone-derived mapping that we're also doing. So now I'll move on to describe the drone imagery. Next slide. So we collected over 50,000 images by drone from about 40 sites across the landscape, processed them into a set of high-resolution aerial imagery for each site. So that it's like Google Earth imagery, but much higher resolution. Next slide. And then a big advantage of this over Google Earth type imagery and other imagery sources is we can also process it into a product called a canopy height model, which is what you see here that shows the heights of the tree canopy. And this is the information that allows us to detect and map individual trees and measure them and do a form of automated forest inventory. Next slide. And that's what you see here with each individual tree marked by a point, and with that size is proportional to the height of the tree. So this becomes the sort of quantitative inventory data we can use to ask these questions about these important forest management issues, such as the abundance of large trees. And so this is data similar to what you'd get from a manual forest inventory, but over a much, much broader area. Next slide. And then we also get a full 3D model by processing the drone images, sometimes called a digital twin, which we use for more advanced processing, like predicting the species of each tree. Next slide. So all of the drone-derived data, just like the ground plot data, is all freely available through the same web platform. On the left, you see a map, which you would also see on our website, of all of the sites in the vicinity where we collected drone imagery. And then on the right, you see what some of these data products look like, including the detected trees, the high-resolution imagery. We're really excited to now have this big database of extensive forest inventory plots from across the North Yuba, which can be used to address forest management questions. And then next slide. So one final feature we're adding to this still is using the high-resolution imagery along with a state-of-the-art computer vision model to classify each tree to species, because species identity is also important information for these management questions, as you'll hear from Emily shortly. And then next slide. And then we'll apply this species prediction to all of our drone data sets to get these big site-wide maps of trees that include species. So we're making all this available for the North Yuba landscape so the Forest Service or other interested parties can use it when planning forest restoration and forest resilience management. All right, so that was my section, the summary of our data collection and processing. And now for an example of how we're applying this to some of these management questions, I'll turn it over to Emily.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm going to start with some background information about these forests. So relative to their historic baseline, today's mixed conifer forests are very dense, and they have an overabundance of small trees. The photo on the left here was taken in 2001 at Blodgett Forest Research Station, which is south of the Yuba Watershed and west of Lake Tahoe. So this is the same kind of forest which is dominant in the Yuba Watershed. And you can see just how dense this forest is. You can't really see very far back into it at all because there's just so much vegetation, including a lot of very small trees. Today's forests also have a lower proportion of fire-adapted pine trees than they did historically, and they have a higher proportion of fire-intolerant fir trees. So this forest densification and shift in species composition towards less fire-adapted trees has contributed to a proliferation of large, high-severity wildfires across the Sierra Nevada because there's just so much continuous fuel for these fires to burn. So one method that managers use to decrease forest density, decrease the proportion of small trees, and increase the relative proportion of fire-adapted pine trees is mechanical thinning, where large machinery is used to selectively remove trees. In the photo on the right, you can see the dramatic changes that mechanical thinning can produce. This forest is much more open, and there are comparatively fewer small trees and more large trees. Next slide, please. So now on to our project. We tested whether current forest thinning policies that restrict what size of trees can be cut down are actually preventing managers from restoring forests to their historical baseline in terms of forest structure and species composition. We tested this by using field data collected in the Yuba River watershed to run computer simulations of mechanical thinning under different policy scenarios. We compared multiple different policy scenarios, including one based on current policy and one based on the proposed large tree amendment, which allows for targeted removal of the larger and more fire-prone trees. And throughout this whole process, we worked with local Forest Service experts to figure out what treatment scenarios to test and how decisions are currently made in mechanical thinning projects. Our goal was really to design our scientific process in a way that makes our results as relevant and useful as possible to local managers. Next slide, please. Our results indicate that current forest policy can't restore species composition in all forest stands, largely due to an overabundance of fire-prone, bigger white fir trees. There are just too many of these larger white firs to restore the historical dominance of the more fire-adapted pine trees. This overabundance of large white firs might also pose risks to large fire-adapted pines, which we know play an outsized role in watershed health. Trees that are close to each other directly compete for resources like water and sunlight, which can lead to mortality, especially in California's frequent droughts. Trees that are too close together can also more easily spread fire between their crowns, which can lead to mortality of individual trees in wildfires and bigger, more severe wildfires overall. So these results suggest that allowing for the removal of some large fire-intolerant trees might be a pragmatic policy, and that surgical application of a large tree amendment that allows for the removal of some large fire-intolerant white firs will better allow managers to promote the health and resilience of fire-adapted pines and restore the historical species composition. And I'll hand it back to Nick to wrap up.
Fantastic, thank you. So thanks to the funding from YWA, we've been able to, one, get a better understanding of where large trees are on the landscape, and then also to understand quantitatively that this large tree amendment, when applied, can really enable the surgical and species-specific restoration that is needed to improve forest health and wildfire resilience in the North Yuba watershed. And this really directly translates, I think, to YWA's mission, which is this long-term security for the Yuba watershed and for water resources. And so we want to just give a special thanks to the Yuba Water Agency, to the board for funding and making this research possible. Your investment is really helping protect these critical forests for generations to come. And that will be the end of our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
Through the chair, a comment and a question. So first, thank you for this presentation. Pretty amazing to see the research that's being done that we're able to be part of. As I understand, one challenge with forest thinning and restoration is there's not really a good market for a lot of the product that's taken out of the forest. Is there maybe a better market for the large white fir, since they're larger trees, that there might be some financial incentive to have those removed, as well as the added benefit of the forest resiliency?
Yes, I think the economics behind a lot of this work is a persistent challenge, and I think there is potential there. I'm not an expert on this component of this work, but I think that could open up another avenue for helping fund some of this work. So we're not only helping us meet our restoration goals, but also making it a little bit more economically viable, which I think is really important if we want to keep increasing the pace and scale of this work across larger landscapes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Rennick.
Just a quick question. So how big of an area did you look at with this initial grant? And then was there anything on the fire resiliency side that really stood out to you? Anything that was like, this concern really exists in the Yuba County watershed, something that stands out more than anything else? So just what size do we look at, and then if there was anything that really stood out as a major risk for fire resiliency?
I will let Derek answer the size or the spatial scale question, but I can quickly address what stands out in the fire resiliency component. And I think in this landscape is just how many big fire adapted trees there are, how productive many parts of this landscape. That is, you don't see this everywhere when you're traveling throughout, for example, the Sierra Nevada. And so it's really a very special place, but it's also, with these patches of large trees, we also have many trees that are also quite large, but they're not fire adapted. And so we have this incredible asset on the landscape, but it's also kind of co-occurring with this incredible risk. And so I think this work is really aimed at better understanding that there is a way to help protect these ecological assets, these fire adapted trees into the future, to help create these old growth forests while also improving our wildfire resilience. And then I'll let Derek answer the other question.
Yeah. Regarding the sort of spatial scope of this, so we did, of course, our plots were a subsample of the whole landscape, but we did design them in a way that they should be a representative sample. So the goal was to represent in a sort of rigorous, robust way the conditions on average across that whole roughly is a 275,000 acre North Yuba project area. And so that applies to both the field plots that were used for Emily's analysis, and then also that set of larger plots that were used for the drone analyses. They were selected to be representative of the range of conditions we find, so that we can be confident that this drone-based approach is accurate across the whole range of conditions. Again, specifically the North Yuba Forest Restoration Project area. Hope that answers that question.
Thank you.
Was there another comment from the board? Or?
Well, yeah, through the chair, Gary and I must have been thinking alike because I wrote down white fir marketable ? I'm going to defer to Willie. Is white fir marketable timber?
The simple answer is yes. I mean, it's when you see log trucks pass through the town of Marysville, I'd say almost 50% of the trees you see on the log trucks are white fir.
Okay.
If you don't mind, Chair, I have a few thoughts here on this study.
Yep.
First off, I want to thank Nick, Derek, and Emily for the presentation and all the work they've done the last several years. And I wanted to give the board kind of the background of how we got involved here. And Joanna, if you're still on, if you might want to supplement what I say, because you've been working on this directly. Several years ago, when we were in the initial planning of the North Yuba Forest Partnership, Ellie Alano, the forest supervisor back then, brought up the point that this study kind of shows is that land managers, in our case, something like 80% of our watershed is owned by the Tahoe National Forest and managed by the Tahoe National Forest. They're limited by the rules. I think, this is a whole career ago of knowledge here, so I'm trying to remember everything here. But the Sierra Nevada framework limits the size of tree that's harvestable in the National Forest system to 30 inches diameter at breast height. And Ellie said, look, Willie, I mean, we have a vast area where the majority of the trees on an acre are over 30 inches diameter at breast height. So how do we reduce the vegetation per acre or make that acre fire resilient if we can't, and I like the term, surgically remove some of these trees? Like, how do we remove the amount of flammable vegetation on that acre without being able to remove these trees? So we said, well, Ellie, how can we help you? And he said, well, we just need information. We need data to justify this plan amendment they talk about. So an amendment to the Sierra Nevada framework that would allow this surgical removal of those trees. And we said, well, look, Yuba Water, this board said, you'd help fund, the data collection. And that's what you see here. What's the benefit to Yuba Water? Well, now this information is in the hands of the Tahoe National Forest, so they can prepare this amendment and future, here's a big word, silvicultural prescriptions, or basically the harvest prescription on any given acre, can hopefully rely on this amendment, and we can remove these trees. And to answer your question in more detail, the 5 species in the mixed conifer forest, ponderosa pine, sugar pine, Douglas fir, white fir, and incense cedar, are all economically viable. And generally, and this is a little bit affected by the sawmill technology in California, but generally the larger the tree, the more economical it is. So it almost looks like, this study is trying to justify what we use in the forest industry a term of high grading, going out and take the best and most valuable trees out of the forest and leave the worst. But the issue is really inverted here. We just want to take, in some of these, let's call them acres, we just want to take the smaller of the large trees. I mean, when you're looking at some of these mature forests, a 30 to 40 inch tree is on the small scale. You've got trees upwards of 5 feet in diameter in these areas. So I just wanted to give you that kind of background and the benefit this work does for our partnership with the Tahoe National Forest. And their new forest supervisor is really looking to implement as much as he can, as fast as he can, and continue on the partnership. So this is great work. I think it was a great investment for Yuba Water. Kind of makes me want to go back and walk around the forest with these folks. So at any rate, that's my little note on the study, and I want to thank them again.
Yeah, thank you to the group also for spending the time this morning and giving us that good report, and keep up the good work.
Could I add one more question?
Yep.
What is the difference on the resilience and the harvest plans between the Tahoe Forest and private landowners?
There is a much wider range of options for private landowners to harvest their trees. The Tahoe has much stricter regulations.
So private landowners cannot make the forest as resilient as we can in the Tahoe Forest?
No, they can. They have the option to. It's really the landowner's intent of what they want to do with their land. So an industrial timber landowner wants, tree production for, inputs into sawmills. Maybe more recreational type landowners want something more like a resilient forest, but also get some economic impact or economic benefit from harvesting their trees. And then the Forest Service is managing for a whole range of benefits like recreation, aesthetics, fire resiliency, and economics just frankly is on the lower end of their priority scale, which is appropriate at this point.
Thank you.
If I may?
Yep.
So on the types of trees, you mentioned there was 5, pines and fir. The fir and pines, what is the difference in flammability? They keep talking about fire-adapted trees, but pines are a very flammable type of tree as well. So I'm just curious, what is the actual value of flammability difference between those?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Director Fuhrer, and I do think a fire-adapted explanation is kind of needed to put this into context. You're right. I'm going to generalize here. The needles and small limbs of conifer trees are generally all flammable. So when you make a very accurate statement, pines are flammable, firs are flammable, and cedars are flammable. We're talking about flammability of the needles and small branches. When we talk about fire-adapted trees, let's use the white fir versus ponderosa pine because those are kind of on opposite ends of the scale. The ponderosa pines are much more resilient to mortality from wildfire due to their fire-adapted thick bark. It's just that simple. It's a thicker bark. It's a fire-adapted bark. The ponderosa pine trees are what we call the pioneer trees. Or the pioneer species. They're the trees that occupy any given acre naturally first. So if some type of disturbance comes through, wildfire, wind throw, harvesting, and you have a near bare mineral soil, the ponderosa pine seeds are the ones that sprout first and grow up first. So imagine a nearly mature stand of ponderosa pine. Then you have the white fir, and nothing against white fir, those of you white fir fans, but they're more of the weed species. So they come in second. They occupy the stand once the ponderosa pines are mature. They're very shade tolerant. They can, with very little sunlight, they can grow. But what they don't have is a fire-adapted bark. They have a very thin bark. So now those trees grow up, and now you have a very overstocked stand of ponderosa pine and white fir. When the wildfire comes through, there's 2 issues here. One, because it's so overstocked, you basically have a continuous mix of touching needles and branches through the whole, let's call it an acre. Once the fire comes through, all the needles and limbs burn. And the white fir end up burning the bark too, and they're the first ones to die because they don't have a thick bark. Then you're left with some remaining surviving ponderosa pine and mortality of nearly all of the white fir. Now, what I just explained is a super generalization, but just to tell you that it's really the bark that makes the ponderosa pine fire resilient, and it's a thinner bark on the white fir in a range. Doug firs kind of lands in the middle.
And the ratio of difference, is it like a 0.25% difference, or no, it's like a 20% difference? Like is there a flammability scale that they rate on, and it can give me a ratio of understanding the values? Yeah,
it's less a flammability scale. It's more of a survivability scale. And ponderosa pines are really resilient to fire, especially the more mature, the more thicker the bark. And white fir really, no matter how mature, they don't ever develop a bark that's significantly fire resilient or survivable.
So when we talk about doing an amendment, I always think of adding something. We're talking here about removing the white firs. Are there other climate-appropriate trees that are even more fire-resistant, or no, we're just going to be promoting ponderosa pines?
It's basically that simple. The ponderosa pine is the most fire-tolerant. It's the most populous in much of the mixed conifer forest. It's the most populated species. I mean, there are areas where the soil and the elevation topography lend themselves to pure white fir and red fir forests. I mean, everything I'm telling you is very simple generalization. There's a range of conditions that exist out there. But to get to kind of the applicability of the amendment, generally what this shows is it would be appropriate to go into these stands of trees and surgically remove the less tolerant white fir trees to break up the continuity of the flammable vegetation and leave the ponderosa pine and sugar pine and to some extent cedar and Douglas fir as the remaining trees that will be resilient to fire in the future. And that was the That was the gut reaction to all of us in the room when we were talking about this issue several years ago, but we needed the data to back it up, and now we have the data to back it up. And just so you know, this is the first I'd seen this presentation, but in my gut, I knew when I saw this come up, you know, to potentially be on the agenda, I knew this is what you guys were going to see, and this was going to be beneficial to us.
And the reason this doesn't match up with the baseline of the traditional forest is simply because we've had a lack of fires because of the preventive maintenance we've done. So we don't have the wipeout of the white firs that happens over decades that normally would occur.
That's exactly right. The exclusion of natural fire from our forests has prevented the natural thinning through fire of these white fir weed trees. And again, everything I'm saying is a super generalization. Every acre is a little bit different, but this data helps us move forward with an amendment and open up the range of possible harvesting methodologies that the Forest Service can implement. And in effect, for Yuba Water Agency, make a resilient forest that protects our water supply. Joanna, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to add to this a little bit, Willie. Thank you for all that context. That was all super helpful. And I just wanted to emphasize that, you know, the 30-inch diameter at breast height rule was a forest rule that came from a negotiation, from my understanding. It wasn't really founded in science. And so this is some of the first research really targeting an understanding of how that rule impacts forest restoration. Just to remind everybody, the goal of the North Yuba landscape planning document is to obtain historic range of variation. And so to do that, you would have to go in and remove some of these targeted large trees, and the species complex also matters. So this research is really foundational to the federal government understanding how to better restore the forest. So it's groundbreaking, and it's going to be not only useful for our watershed, but all of the watersheds up and down the state.
Okay, thanks very much. I think we're ready for item 3, which is a presentation on the long-term extension of the Yuba Accord. Willie.
All right, so as we've been discussing for a few years now, we did get the State Water Resources Control Board to extend our application for our Yuba Accord water transfer. Specifically, what the State Board approved on the 21st of January was the extension of our points of a diversion and places of use for the long-term accord transfer. But that's the conclusion, but I want to back up and just remind everyone here and the public what the Yuba Accord is. So the Yuba Accord, negotiated in the early 2000s, adopted in 2008, has 3 parts to it. The first part is the fisheries agreement. Primarily, it's an agreement between Yuba Water Agency and California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Other NGOs are signatories and supporters of the fisheries agreement, along with our member units. What the fisheries agreement does is it establishes the flows in the lower Yuba River to benefit salmon and steelhead. And then the other 2 agreements allow for the transfer or sale of that water once it meets the Feather River south of the Delta. So I wanted to bring up the fisheries agreement to remind you it is part of the Yuba Accord package, but no action was taken on the fisheries agreement. The fisheries agreement remains in place until we receive a new FERC license. Okay, so set the fisheries agreement aside. The other 2 agreements do relate to the extension of our petition with the State Board that was approved a few weeks ago, and that is the water purchase agreement with the Department of Water Resources. All 3 of these things, let me back up. The petition we got approved, the water purchase agreement, and the conjunctive use agreement, the original agreements all expired on December 31st. So we've been working on this for the last several years to get all of these new approvals to extend the water transfer program to 2050. So we got the petition approved by the State Board. We have negotiated a new water purchase agreement with the Department of Water Resources, and what that allows for is the Department of Water Resources to be the broker or the middleman of our transferable water with water users south of Delta. So that has been extended. I have executed. You guys gave me authority to execute these agreements I'm talking about. I've executed on my side. We're waiting for it to come back executed from the Department of Water Resources. The last set of agreements are the conjunctive use agreements. Those are agreements between Yuba Water and our member units, the 8 member units, and that allows for the conjunctive use water transfers related to the Yuba Accord. All 8-member units have executed those agreements. I've executed those agreements, so they're ready to go. So with the state boards extending our permits basically until 2050, the new conjunctive use agreements all executed and ready to go, and the water purchase agreement, which we're just waiting to get back from the Department of Water Resources, the accord is essentially extended until 2050. So that's basically everything we've been working on the last, since its inception, but working on the renewals for the last 2 or 3 years.
Charlie.
Could you enlighten us a little bit more on the, the groundwater transfer part that we seem to have had a different in the accord than what the later transfers had, where the state could say how much of the water was connected between the stream and the groundwater.
Yeah, so the water purchase agreement with the Department of Water Resources is essentially the same as it was, originally in 2008. However, there were a few revisions or updates based on, how the water markets, how water management has evolved in the last 15 years. The depletion factor is what Director Matthews is talking about, and it's generally how pumping of groundwater, the use of groundwater, is replenished by natural flow in the rivers. And so there is a factor that's based on, or there's a number, a percentage called the depletion factor, which has a number of factors that go into it. Natural flow through the river into the groundwater, time of year when the pumping occurs, and time of year when the hydrology occurs to replenish that groundwater. But to get to Director Matthews' point, there is now going to be a depletion factor annually imparted on the transferability of our conjunctive use water that will be, I'll use the term negotiated, but it's negotiated based on actual engineering and hydrology factors with the Department of Water Resources. So it will decrease the amount of conjunctive use water that is transferred based on what that percentage is.
Can you give a little bit more understanding of what the factors, what the outcome might finally be of the depletion factor?
The actual range percentage, somewhere between 10 and 20%.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Rennick?
Through the chair. I just want to say big congratulations to everybody that's been working on this for so long, and all the effort of preserving our ability to transfer water and support the farmers and keep our region viable and out of the hands of others' control. So all the proactive work, all the time that everybody's spending doing these things. I know you all have a lot of different roles, even like your flood risk managers and things like that. They do 10 different things, but to keep water delivery at the forefront is huge. And I know it took a ton of work to get to this point in a lot of years. So congratulations and thank you to all the staff involved.
Thanks, Director House.
I will just second what Rennick said. I don't want to let this moment pass without recognizing all the people that were involved. And we are, just for the rest of the board's information, I think in the near future have a little bit more formal recognition of this accomplishment, because the original accord itself was a huge accomplishment. And I'm not sure that, that everybody in the state would have bet on us getting it renewed and for 25 more years. So it's just a monumental accomplishment. And I think, Willie, you were very humble in the way you presented that. And I know others in the room and out of the room were also key in getting that done. So we are going to formally recognize that pretty soon.
Excellent.
Item 4, consider approval of a grant amount of $3,038,912 to the Olivehurst Public Utility District for use in finishing design, permitting, and land management related work for the wastewater line project from Wheatland to the OPUD wastewater treatment plant. Creighton.
Morning, Chair, Board. here again today to ask for a grant to finish the design work. The reason why for the additional design work is state was going to give us around $30 million. We went up to 75. Due to that increase, OPUD was able to put some things that were long-lasting fixes into the system. That includes improvements to the wastewater treatment plant to extend its life and the capacity for peak wet weather flows. Improvements to 2 pump stations that will give it longer life. This will also be helpful for Wheatland as well. And to change the pipeline on Mary Avenue to allow for connections to go from septic to sewer. And last but not least, to get through permitting, the last part of permitting. So that is the reason why I'm here and asking for your approval. And Swan G is here from OPUD. And this will be the last request. Next time we come to you, that we will be here for agreements and moving forward on the project if it is what you would like. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
Just a comment. I'm glad that we're able to include these additional things, and thank you for the continued hard work on this effort.
And through the chair, just a clarifying question. So these improvements, they also help the current ratepayers, right? They keep them from having these prolonged costs over a long period of time.
That's correct. It should help the current ratepayers of Olivehurst as well.
Yeah.
To forego increases, hopefully those increases in the future, because what we're doing is putting money into the plant and helping them with that.
Well, good work and good planning and way to use the resources for not just the expansion, but to support the current users as well.
Yeah, we still have a lot of work to do before we come back to you, so appreciate it.
Any public comment on this item? Not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you.
You got those, Mandy? I think Charlie was first to second.
I had first as Director Bradford and second as Director Matthews. Is that correct?
I think so. Andy was just a little slow. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I think we're ready for the manager's report.
Okay, well, things are interesting this winter season. All is going well. However, we have a hydrologic condition that's shaping up to be very similar to 2013. And in 2013, we had some significant precipitation and snowfall early in the season in November and December, and then it was significantly dry the rest of the winter and early spring. We're seeing that this year. And I'll remind you, 2013 was the first year of a 3-year drought. So I'm not forecasting doom and gloom, but what I'm telling you is it's shaping up to be a questionable water supply year. And the difference between this year and 2013 is our snowpack is even less than what we saw in 2013. Currently, our snowpack is about 20 to 40% of normal year to date, and the 10-day forecast doesn't show any real significant precipitation. And the other issue that happens is it's pretty warm out, so the snowpack that we do have is starting to melt and run off into the reservoir. Caitlin and I will be meeting with the Army Corps on Wednesday, I guess that's tomorrow, to discuss encroachment into the flood pool. We believe the Army Corps will allow us the deviation they normally allow us. The issue there is it's tough to store water in the flood pool when there's not, there is some runoff from the snowmelt, but not a lot. So we're going to do everything we can to conserve water and be ready for irrigation season, but it's not shaping up to be a great year at this point. The positive side is we get precipitation and snow through February and March. So hopefully we do see some storms in the future and we can build up a moderate snowpack and get the reservoir as full as possible. With all that said, some other good news is we are at 133% of normal year to date for storage in Bullard's Bar. So we were able to capture, significant volume of water during the December storm. So, we did everything we could to capture that. So that's looking fairly decent. It's really the bleak snowpack that's the issue. On to the tunnel outage. I'm happy to report the tunnel outage remains on track, and everything is looking good. They're buttoning things up and getting ready to fill the tunnel and penstock early next week. The PG&E relay work that has been occurring in Colgate is going well and looks to be on track to be complete once we get everything water backed up and ready for generator and relay testing. So that is all good news. Both the Narrows units remain online and available for water deliveries into the lower Yuba River. You know, you see, there's no real scientific trend that I identify in this, El Nino, La Nina report that you get in your packet, but we are kind of transitioning between a La Nina to a neutral position. Normally what happens after that is we get into an El Nino. So I don't know what my simplification of that is when we kind of transfer between, or we shift between La Nina to El Nino, that's kind of when you see these dry spells. So no scientific correlation there, but I just want to let you know that's kind of why we put that in your report, just so you can see that ocean temperatures do determine the jet stream and, storm flow onto the west coast of the United States. So anyway, that's a little bit for fun. On to human resources. You'll see someone new up at the table with me today. Teresa Della Santa is our new Director of Administration. So I want to take a minute to congratulate Teresa on that promotion and to fill the role that, Terry was Assistant General Manager, but she at the same time filled that role. And now Teresa is formally our Director of Administration. So welcome, Teresa. We did have an open recruitment for that position, and I will say we did get some well-qualified candidates, both externally and internally, and I want to formally thank our internal candidates who did not get the job. They showed their interest, they showed their leadership, they showed their talents, and reminded management of their capabilities. And we do have a strong bench of talented employees ready to help out wherever they need to. So I wanted to let the board know that. It was both internal and external. I will read this about Teresa. Since joining Yuba Water Agency in 2022, Teresa has been a trusted leader, overseeing human resources and administrative services and leading key initiatives such as the classification and compensation study, HR system modernization, and labor negotiations. She brings more than 2 decades of local government leadership experience and is well suited for this expanded role. There's a little summary about Teresa. Thanks for being here. On the comm side of things, KFBK Radio and YubaNet picked up our press release about the Lower Yuba River Accord extension. The Appeal Democrat ran a story about the Marysville Ring Levee that included mentions of several grants we've produced for that project. CBS 13 had some great coverage of the Marysville Ring Levee work that Ryan was interviewed for. Westlands Water District also put out a very nice press release celebrating the Water Board's decision to extend the Yuba Accord. On Saturday morning, we were featured on CNBC's educational program called Now We Know with Steve Gutenberg, explaining how we manage water on the Yuba for the benefits of people, farms, and the environment. Sponsorships awarded since our last meeting include, and this is a long list here, the Yuba-Sutter Fair, the Fair Livestock Awards, Lyndhurst High School Football, Beale Air Force Base Community Events for 2026, the Bacchai Festival, Trauma Intervention Program's Heroes with Heart Gala, Marysville High School's Safe and Sober Grad Night, the Special Olympics, Northern California 2026 Law Enforcement Torch Run for Yuba-Sutter counties, and Edgewater Elementary's Spring Festival. And as a reminder, next week is our film screening of The Day the Levee Broke, our new documentary marking 40 years since the 1986 flood. There's the staff screening at 3 p.m. and the public screening at 5:30. Both will be at the Lee Burroughs Theater on E Street, and our next upcoming meeting will be on February 17th.
Thank you, Willie. For director's reports, we'll start with Andy. Before you go to the director. Sorry. Could you give us a kind of a rundown if we're going into a drought situation? Will there be a possibility of a groundwater substitution?
Yeah. Based on the hydrology we're seeing that I reported on today, I don't have a percentage likelihood, Director Matthews, of a groundwater substitution year, but I would say it's more than likely if these conditions persist, it would be a potential groundwater substitution year.
Thank you. Okay, Andy.
Went and saw the film Melania, and if you ever get a chance to see it, it's well worth the effort. They had it right. 99% of the people that saw it liked it, and 10% of the critics hated it. So it didn't fall to the Democrats, but it showed you government at a different level. You'll see things there you never knew were there. And it was a very good movie. That's about it.
Nick.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for their continued support on finishing up the Marysville Ring Levee project. It's super important to our county and to our city there to be great partners and be able to fund projects that really make an impact. Also wanted to thank Vanjie and Dee Dee there for coming out this weekend and helping with the community cleanup. Their Rotary group sponsors the baseball field for Marysville Little League out on 14th Street, and they were out there with I don't know if they were voluntary, their husbands were voluntary partners in this or not, but they were out there and they were working hard, and it's always great to get people giving back to the community. And I wanted to invite everybody, make sure it's on your radar for this Thursday. We have the 175th birthday celebration for Marysville. It's at 5:30 p.m. at the Marysville Elks Lodge. And there's going to be some refreshments and desserts, but there's going to be a lot of people presenting stories and different proclamations for the city's celebration of its 175th birthday of incorporation. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Seth.
Just wanted to reiterate the issue about keeping our waterways clean and safe. I'd sent you some documents, just checking in to see how that was progressing.
Yep, I've passed those along to staff, and we are reviewing those, and we'll get back to you on that.
John.
All right, I got a couple things. First off, I wanted to let you guys know I couldn't make that tunnel tour that you all went on, so I was able to get on a tour of the outage and the power plant. And just and I told Willie that it's just so amazing to see the employees so passionate about what they're doing up there at the powerhouse. Just it really made my tour just to see how involved they are in their work. Just really neat. Secondly, I'm going to ask everybody's help on this. I had a meeting yesterday with one of the ag teachers at Lyndhurst High School, Taylor Bisbee, her and her husband Chase, kind of doing the ag thing out there at the Lyndhurst FFA. And why she reached out to me on this one, I'll never know, because I thought maybe she wanted to know about walnuts or crop dusting or something I know about, but no. They're doing a big project on AI data centers and the use of water that they'll have, the use of, how they'll deplete farmland, permitting, zoning, environmental groups. Anyway, I've got a whole list of notes here. I met her late last night, and I jotted down a bunch of notes. So I was wondering if there's something the water agency could help us do. And then the second part of that is basically it sounds like it's going to be a debate club. So different kids are assigned different sides, and then they're going to have a debate about it. And, some of them are going to take the side of farming. Some of them are going to take the side of water and different things. So they're going to need 4 people to be on panels to basically judge these kids when they present their debate 4 different times. So I was hoping maybe the water agency or maybe the board, 4 of us could agree to do it, and maybe I can get 4 people from the county to do it at a different time, and we could help them out. They're really doing great things out there, but I have no idea about AI data centers or any information on them. I can barely run my telephone. So if there's anybody at the water agency that can help me get this information and where I could go, I've jotted down some notes to get a hold of Beale Air Force Base and things like that. So any help you guys can offer me, anybody want to get involved? I think it's great things they're doing out there at Lyndhurst High School in the ag department.
Yeah, Director Messick, let's talk after what this will entail, and we can probably help you out there.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to compliment the staff on the accord, because our biggest revenue comes from selling power, but our second biggest revenue comes from selling water or implementing the sale of water. So it's a huge step in the right direction that the whole staff put in over the last number of years to have the accord extended.
Thank you. Gary?
Congratulations, Teresa, and the staff that was on the CNBC program on Saturday morning. I remember certainly Ryan and Willie were on it. I can't remember if anyone else besides Mike Felice, but you guys did a great job. So thank you. Enjoyed watching that. A few NACWA items. So Willie, Adam, Mike Felice, and I met with NACWA leadership yesterday to talk about Yuba Water priorities from a NACWA perspective for the year. Tomorrow I have a NACWA board meeting in Calusa, and in case you guys missed the email, March 6th is the NACWA annual meeting in Chico. It's a Friday, so if you happen to be available and you're interested, I'd encourage you to attend. They usually have some great presentations there. And then I will miss our next board meeting due to being out of town on vacation. So that's it from me.
Thanks, Gary. I had the good fortune of being on a BMLC, am I saying that right? I think it's the Beale Military Liaison Council. Is that correct? I was on a trip last week to Vandenberg with that group and was very impressed with the work they're doing and the missions that are being carried out at Beale and Vandenberg. But I mostly wanted to mention that our own Sammy Nall is the chair of that group and doing an incredible job. And it struck me that we have lots of people like that doing extra things in the community. And this abundance in leadership that you talked about just a few minutes ago, Willie, is very apparent, and the culture of sharing that leadership with good causes in the community is a great thing. So, as a member of the board, I certainly support those efforts. I also want to apologize. I'm going to be out of town as well. I'm going to miss the movie premiere next week. So, sorry about that, Dee Dee. And also, congratulations, Teresa. That's well deserved. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com. Wednesday, local government meetings made shorter. For your information, we pull out informative sections and present them individually. For your information, posting Wednesdays here on Yuba-Sutter.live.
Yuba-Sutter.live, it's the truth that comes through.